It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alexandros Papachristidis. Alexandros is consultant cardiologist at King's College Hospital. He has a lot of experience in contrast echocardiography, and he will address, through case review, the following question. How can contrast enhanced ultrasound solve inconclusive exams? We've seen that some of them, a good number of them, can be inconclusive, and we have seen also in the field we've been talking about before that accurate, reproducible assessment is extremely important. So please, Alexandros, help us to answer to this question.
Thank you, Jerome, and thank the organizers for the kind invitation, and thank you for having me. So in my talk, I'm going to cover these topics. Number one, I'll talk you very briefly about the clinical indications, which I believe the vast majority of the audience are familiar with. Second, I will describe the basic principles of contrast echo, which is physics. Third, we'll have a short discussion how you can make contrast echo images better in terms of instrumentation. And settings. And number four will be the majority of my talk. We'll discuss cases and review cases together. So starting with the clinical indications, I'm confident that you know all this in your experience and the study you've done in terms of contrast echo. We use contrast echo to improve the endocardial border delineation and use of one-motion analysis for detection of coronary artery disease and cardiomyopathies. We use contrast to enhance the Doppler signals for assessing the coronary artery pressure and valve gradients. We also use it to generate LV opacification and quantify left ventricular volumes and ejection fraction. But when you do that, you should be cautious because though contrast echo has very good reproducibility and very accurate in terms of comparing to MRI. But you consider the different volumes compared to baseline echo is an enhanced echo. So you use contrast echo to quantify the left ventricular volume. You should be cautious in terms of what reference value you're using, because the published data actually refer to unenhanced to the image of contrast enhanced image. So you can see here in this table, the contrast echo produces bigger volume, so you need to be cautious about interpretation, what reference values to use. Number four, we use contrast to generate cardiac chamber and vascular classification and confirm or exclude intracardiac diagnosis. And finally, to demonstrate microvascular perfusion. Now, when we're talking about the basic physics of contrast echo, the first thing that comes up is non-linear ultrasound imaging. And when we say non-linearity, we mean a property of a medium by which the shape and the amplitude of the returning ultrasound signal is not proportional to the input excitation. And this may sound a bit complex, but it's not. It just means that the returning ultrasound parts from a non-linear reflector, like the microbubbles, differ significantly both in shape and amplitude from the transmitted waves, whereas the reflectors with linear response, like the myocardium, return parts similar to the transmitted ones. And I'll show you a figure to explain that down the line. So by applying pulses with alternating amplitude, which power modulation or phase, which is pulse inversion modality, it's possible to enhance the signal from a non-linear reflector, which are the microbubbles, and to the same time suppress the signal from the reflector with the more linear response, which is myocardium. And you want to dive a bit deeper into physics. The non-linearity parameter betray is a fundamental parameter in non-linear acoustics and differs significantly. So not only between microbubbles and myocardium, but also between tissues. I'll explain you towards the end of my talk. And it's defined as the ratio of coefficients of the quadratic term in the linear term of the error expansion of the state equation. It sounds very complex, but this is the physical background of the non-linearity parameter. It's difficult to measure the non-linearity parameter for each tissue, but that defines basic principle of contrast echocardiography. And here we have a look at the two basic modalities that we use. Actually, they're pulse sequences. The one is the power modulation, the other is pulse inversion. So power modulation, as said, is that we use alternate pulses in terms of amplitude. So the first pulse here is full amplitude. The second pulse we transmit is half amplitude. So they alternate. The first pulse is full, the second one is half, the third one is full, the fourth one is half, it goes on. Now you have a reflector with linear response. What you're going to receive here, you're going to receive exactly the same parts that we transmit. So as you can see, it's exactly the same. So they don't differentiate amplitude. And the same happens with the half amplitude pulse. So when these are received by the machine, we apply some what we call post-processing, which has two steps. The first step is to scale the pulses. So we multiply every other pulse with the half amplitude by 2, which makes it full amplitude. And then we subtract one from another, and we cancel the signal we receive. So we know the signal. If we look at a reflector with nonlinear response, then the transmitted pulse is full amplitude, and then we receive a pulse which is completely different what we transmit because the response is nonlinear. And the same applies to half amplitude pulse. So we receive a different pulse in terms of shape and amplitude, which again is scaled because our ultrasound machine can understand where this ultrasound wave is coming from, just received by the machine. So it's scaled again by the same process. And when we subtract one from another, we get some signal because they're not identical. So they're not cancelled out. In that case, the nonlinear response of microbubble is enhanced, as you can see here, and the linear response of the myocardium is not. That's why myocardium usually appears black when you use contrast. The pulsing version is another multi-pulse technique where the pulses are different in phase. So the first pulse has this shape, and the second pulse is inverted. The third pulse again is this shape, and the fourth is inverted, so they're out of phase. The received pulse again is identical when we're talking about reflective linear response. And then one step post-processing, which is summation, so we have them, and because they're out of phase, that results in zero signal. Now, as previously, the nonlinear response of the reflectors means that we receive a path which is different with transmitted. Again, when we sum them, when we add them, we get a signal. And so that means that the signal from a nonlinear reflector is enhanced, though the signal from a linear reflector is cancelled out. And this is the basic principle of contrast echo. Now, what can we do to make the contrast echo images better? And I always look at these 5 elements. The number one is the Cantor index, which is about output we use as the energy we deliver to the structure we study with ultrasound. Number 2 is the fundamental and harmonic frequencies, which we can change. I can show you what's the impact. Number 3, we adjust the focus of the ultrasound beam, we adjust the gain, and finally, we deal with the dosing, the adaptation, the contrast. And we need to be very careful about without. I'm going to show you some examples how I can change the contrast images completely. When we talk about mechanical index assets, that's the energy we deliver. And the ultimate mechanical index is the lowest mechanical index that provides strong enhancement with sufficient penetration, that is harsh attenuation, and also minimize the background noise. And when we're talking about fundamental nonlinear image, fundamental frequencies, the mechanical index should be less than 0.2. When you use harmonic imaging, it should be between 0.25 and 0.3. And ideally, fundamental nonlinear multipulse imaging should be used over harmonic imaging, and should be in a very low mechanical index, which means, as I said before, below 0.2. And this is going to reduce the distraction of microbubbles. At high mechanical index, the microbubbles are destroyed, and you don't have greater precipitation of the LV. So when we are talking about fundamental nonlinear imaging, the optimal transmit frequency should be 1.6 to 2 megahertz. And when we're talking about harmonic imaging, it should be 1.3, 1.5. But because we also receive the second harmonic, that should be 2.6 to 3 megahertz. And don't forget that the frequency plays a role in penetration and also resolution. So don't hesitate to change the frequency depending whether you want to achieve better penetration or better resolution. Now, the focus is also very important, and quite frequently my trainees come and ask me where the focus should be when they're understanding. And what's important here is to understand what we're going to see or what we want to see on the contrast. If we want to look at endocardium and trace the LV to produce the volumes and the fraction, then the focus should be positioned at the mass annulus, which is going to reduce the attenuation of the far field and will allow to visualize the insertion, because that's where we start tracing. We need to see the mitral valve lifted hitch points to start tracing the LV. If you want to look at the apex or the morphology of any masses there or motion of fusion, then the focus can be moved to the near field. The gain is also important to adjust, and there are two ways of doing that. You can adjust the overall gain, or what you call the time gain compensation, which provides separate adjustment for the near and the far fields. And the setting should be adjusted to provide a more homogeneous difference between the left cavity and the locality of the myocardium. And finally, dosing the administration is very important. And it is it's necessary to avoid attenuation of the contrast in the far field. That happens when you have a very high dose, which accumulates at the apex, but also duration of the research is very important, because if it's too short, then you don't have good classification. So faster injection or fusion rate may create high concentration of microvalves at the apex, and you're going to have basal attenuation artifact. But if you inject slowly, you will have a lot of swelling. And this is an example of in the important cases. The pulse administration also is very important. The recommendation is to use very low contrast agent doses, a small dose, and follow with 3 to 5 ml slow normal saline plus, which should be over 5 to 10 seconds. That's quite slow, because that will allow the contrast to accumulate together and give you good classification. And stop flashing when the contrast appears to be identical. When you use continuous infusion, follow the manufacturer advice, but usually infusion is between 0.6 and 1 milliliters per minute. And again, aim for homogeneous level that have contrast classification to avoid swelling and sharing the best segments. Let's go through some cases together. We start with a 58-year-old lady with a large lymph with anasis who has been referred for early function assessment of thrombus. As you can see here, this image, you can see the kinetic. I would say I'm quite confident in terms of seeing the myocardium here. I'm not sure about the myocardium on the platform, but yeah, definitely the myocardium can be here. So it's not one of the typical cases that you don't see the apex. However, looking at that, you see some linear reflectors here, which is definitely gratified on anything else. There's another structure here, but I'm not sure I can tell what it is here. And also doing a 3D, I would say it's particularly helpful. So the next step is to give contrast, and you start seeing something here. I mean, see that you suspect there's something there, you just implant the probe, and that's what you get. So this is a large thrombus, apex, and you see there's no confusion here. It's black, and black, and it's a very good setting for, so use LVO setting, mechanical limit 0.7. We use harmonics with transmitting frequency 1.3 and receiving 0.6. And here again is just at 75%. So good classification of the LV, and you can see the thrombus here with no perfusion inside, and there's no noise, there's no static noise from saturation in the image. But we saw the case here. Here's plasma replenishment, but you can see that the gain here is too high, and you get some static noise here. You get some noise, but again, you can appreciate there's no perfusion within the structure, which suggests for the thrombus. Another patient with an LV. Again, here we have what we said contrast swelling. So the level grade is not classified properly, and it's not uncommon when they stay kinetic because the flow is very slow there. And what you can do there, you need to adjust your dosing and administration. You need an extra voltage of contrast, and a slow flash is allow the contrast to accumulate at the apex. And here again, it's not ideal. You can also try to drop the mechanical index to 0.16. By switching to the lower MI setting, that's fundamental figures of 5.6 megahertz. But again, you see that this is saturated, so you have a lot of noise here. There's no perfusion here, and this is all noise. And you can appreciate that the gain is too high. But even using the LVO preset, if you wait for the cones to accumulate, and as we discussed before, give a slow a flash that will allow the cones to accumulate, you upgrade the classification of the LVO to get rid of the swelling. Another patient with LED. In fact, here I'll show you the difference between the LVO and the low MI. LVO stands for left ventricular classification, low MI stands for mechanical index. And you can see here the mechanical index in these two studies. It is 0.16 here, and on the other side is 0.3. The gain here is 77%, and here 75% on the left. Here we use harmonic imaging 1.3, transmitting 2.6 molecules of receiving, and here we use 1.6 receiving. And here you can see that actually the end of the caribou is much better in this setting. So here the hydro classification is not great. And you see how it feels when you drop the mechanical index. It gives you better classification because it does not destroy the bubbles, micro bubbles, and the caribou can be seen very nicely. The same applies to the stitch and you see the swelling here with a high mechanical index. But apart from that, I'd like to draw your attention to the frame rate here. When you use this harmonic, the frame rate is 37 Hz, and when you use the fundamental, it's 28 Hz. And this is important for your specific studies when normally you want higher frame rate. And here we move to the chamber view. Now the same applies in feature view. You see much better classification with a low MI compared to the actual preset. Another patient with anterior STEMI. Here from here you can see that the apex is akinetic with some increased reflectivity here, so high signal intensity. I'm looking closer, I'll say that looks like a calcified structure can be inserted myocardial band over films I cannot really tell. So I would definitely use contrast here. And this is a very good setting. Contrast, you can see much here, the whole LV, and you can see the thrombus.
Alexandros, excuse me to interrupt you. There is a problem with your audio. It's coming down.
Really?
Do you use a filter, or are you far away from the mic?
Sorry
about that.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better. Thank you.
So what I'm saying here that you see the whole LV, but you can optimize it further and bring the focus towards the apex. And this is what you see. You can see very clearly the LV wall, which is very thin, and the contrast going around the thrombus all the way to the LV wall, the apex. And you see the focus now is at the apex, not in the cavity. Again, you can use low MI. Mechanical index has dropped to 0.18, but again, the gain is 78%, it's quite high. You have a lot of noise here. And I'll show you another example of good LV thrombus with low MI, but no noise in the thrombus, which demonstrates very clearly the lack of perfusion. And here, the gain is too high, but we have a lot of contrast concentration here. After that, you have the attenuation in the far field, as you said. So the concentration of the contrast like the apex causing attenuation, but you cannot see the far field clearly. Another patient with an LED infarct. You can start seeing something here in enhanced images. And during the contrast, we can see that actually the contour here is not as round as should be, and the apex not very thin. It's a good setting, I would say. You can appreciate the lack of vision here. Maybe the time gain composition is quite high in the far field. The focus is passing in the right place. It could be a bit lower. And the dosing administration is better. You have very good classification of the LV. And again, here you can appreciate the lack of vision and using orthogonal views, which is very, very important. I'll show you another example down the line that it's important to use orthogonal basis of axis views to appreciate the 3D structure as the equivalent and the level of apex. And again, here, if you change to the lower mass setting, the drops in 0.3, 0.18. You can appreciate the thumbs again. The gain is too high, but also the result of contrast concentrations were at the apex. In that case, probably I would have dropped the gain towards 70%. But in any event, you can appreciate there's a filming effect there. Despite the noise here, you can see that this contour is not normal, and this is because of the numbers. And you can see, you can appreciate that the contrast concentration here is very high. Another patient now with an headache infarct, and yeah, the settings are good. You can see the whole LV. But minor comment here, probably the focus will be further down with the language. But what's important here is that you don't see anything here, you don't appreciate the tools, but it's important to use off-axis views. So when you unlay the probe, you can see something here. And on top of it, you can use your orthogonal views. You will find a small thrombus here at the LVA. So don't forget to come off-axis if you need to use orthogonal views. Another patient with anterior STEMI, and from here you can appreciate a large akinetic area. And this setting is good to look at the LV apex, maybe too much contrast here at the apex, which is causing the attenuation of the base. So it's not ideal, you don't see the LV, but it's okay, you don't see the LV apex and to look at numbers. And of course, you can bring the focus up to the apex and use a better appreciation of the anatomy. You can see the myocardial rotation is very thin as you expect at the apex. And of course, you do the animation of the probe to see different aspects of the apex. And now you see you have better concentration of the contrast. You don't have much of the apex, and that gives better assessment of the beta segment. I don't have to do the dose in administration, so you need a small dose of contrast and then slow flash, so line. You can put these images side by side, and you can see how this image on the left does not appreciate the basal segments of the below on the right side. It's very good. And if you look at the settings, are exactly the same. So you use LVO at 0.3 mechanical index, both images. The gain is at 75%. You use harmonics at 1.3 to 2.6 megahertz. And it was exactly the same frame rate. The synaplasty and the two-chamber view, you have good opacification here, the basal segments, but not like they have with the apex. And then you see the problem bit, then you see the LV wall coming here, and there's a bit of shadowing here, the apex where my head is cut. And it's important to angulate a bit more. You can appreciate the true LV wall, and here, this is a shadowing wall, this is shadowing that may make it tricky to understand where the LV wall is and how some words on this along the line. And now when you open up the field wall, you can see the trade is a normal shadowing from the markers called the epic, which is a bit tricky. So always be mindful when you have a kinetic epic, it's likely to have some scarring at the edge, which is going to cause some acoustic shadowing. Again, the three-chamber view with LVO or lower mic, the lower mic which is better in the private border, so don't hesitate to if you need. And again, the very high concentration. Contrast is very bright, it's straight image, but probably troubling and I would wait for the contrast to dissolve and I would be there image. A patient with inferior stem here. Here I can comment in terms of some study for a certain case of tracking, we'll explain there. But when you move to the inferior wall, you see some kind of here, and there's a lot of swelling, you cannot be actually sure. But when you drop your mechanical technique to 0.86, you have a speed defect. Again, there's a lot of noise here that means that the gain is too high, 78%. I would drop around 70% here, and HPD is here fundamental imaging at 1.6 megahertz. And then you can move your focus forward the apex and better appreciation of anatomy without that defect. Another difference I told you before, when you drop the gain to 68%, keep the mechanical index around 0.2 or 0.364. That gives you better appreciation of the thrombus and complete lack of fusion. And if you put these images side by side, you will see that by dropping the mechanical index to 0.21 and the gain to 68% from 78%, then you have a big lack of perfusion. It's definitely thrombus. As you have some space, you can increase your gain a bit more. You get better appreciation of the perfusion in the myocardium, and you see how it discriminates nicely from the non-perfused thrombus. So here you bring the gain to 70% with the same mechanical index, and you see how the thrombus now differentiates very nicely. There's no hesitation to call this a thrombus. There's no perfusion there. You can see how it separates nicely from the perfused myocardium. Let's say another patient here is also quite interesting with moderate elements of inflammation, from before, and history of previous myocardial infarctions. We don't have further details, but there's no infarction. So when I see someone with cold infarction, I am always concerned about scarring. And here I want to say there is some scarring here, but also there is some feeling defect. And here the investigation of it. So you need to adjust the dosing, the administration. So you need an extra bolus of contrast, and then a slow flash is going to pacify the area. Which is very good, but again, I think can be even better. You give a bit more contrast with slow flash of saline. I can see there it's much better. What we see here is that the child has defect. So dosing and administration is very important. Within changing of settings here, the mechanical index 0.3, the gain 75%. Harmonic imaging, we just changed the dosing and administration of the contrast, which gave us very good appreciation of the ADA, without changing the settings. A patient with ischemic cardiomyopathy and recurrent VT. Here we see what we call contrast failure. This is what we discussed before. So if you give the contrast very slowly, or if the flash not adequate, and especially in condition of low cardiac output or enhanced apex, then you end up with this image, which is suboptimal to appreciate the performance at the apex. So I think what you can do, you can drop the mechanical index, or you can contrast and a slow flash, and this is what we do here, and have much classification of the index. Now without changing the any of the settings. It's not how the machine just dosing and administration with an extra dose of contrast and some slow flash with saline. Now, this is the other option I told you before, that you can go to my setting, but again, if you don't adjust your contrast dose and the flash, you will end up with the same problem. So dropping the mechanical index is good because it's going to reduce the bound distraction, but again, you're not cautious and mindful about the dose of contrast you give and the flash, you end up with the same problem, no matter whether you use low MI or LDO. Again, we didn't change the settings here, we just gave more contrast and the flash. Here, one would say that probably is too much contrast, but allows you to identify the forms here. And again, another patient with old LAD defect. We can't see much here, so this is a no-brainer that you need contrast. You see some high intensity signals here, and using X-plane again have better appreciation of the anatomy, and by giving contrast, we have what we call here is a shadowing. So the LV wall is over there, and it's not the ventricular wall, it's just having from the calcified thrombus at the apex. And this is what we call acoustic shadowing. So we need to be mindful with the shadows coming from calcified thrombus or even from the apex scarred. So you need to open up a bit to your angle here and appreciate the ventricular wall, because what you see here is not the LV wall, it's just the shadowing. And if you change your settings, but you don't adjust your contrast dosing and administration, you end up with the same problem. You have a lot of shadowing here, but there is no contrast going through. You need to give an extra bonus and flash slowly, and that's what you get with just adjusting the dose of your contrast bonus. And here this shadowing, and the LV wall is over there, so this without a doubt is numbers is calcified. A lot of shadowing here. Again, be mindful not to interpret that as an LV wall. Until you look at the CT scan of this patient, you can see the white area, which is the calcium, and the black area is a thrombus on the 14 view, which I'm here just at the apex, and also the MRI, rectangular piece of thrombus, revascularized, which I'm view, unfortunately. Another patient with a large LAD infarct, and this one of the two cases I'm pretty sure that everyone has come across. the eccentric epigenetics aneurysmal. You need to struggle to get a contrast there. You need to be very cautious with your bonuses and the flashes, but also the gain of the index. So this is a not bad classification, despite the mechanical 0.8 is quite high. The gain has dropped 64%. The focus is where it has to be. And I would say there's a thing different here now. Coming from the previous case we saw, one could say that this is a challenge, but I doubt it is. And I don't think it is because you see this the dark area does not go through the myocardial wall, so it stops there. And actually, you can see the scar here, this bright area is a scar. If it was shadowing, it should go through the myocardium because the scar should be shadowed. So I think just the feeling defect, and the myocardium is over there, there's a weight, the white area here, there's a scar, and continues over there. You can have better appreciation if you change the angle a bit. Here, definitely this is shadowing. So this shadow comes from the scar of the ape. It's a very difficult case. And you see what I said before, that now the shadow comes through the myocardial wall and goes all the way to the farthing. So definitely this is shadowing. It's not from all, it's superimposed to the thrombus. It's difficult to tell. By using this, where my second, you see the mechanical has dropped to 0.1 mass 0.11 and became 65%, the focus at the apex. And here I'm pretty sure about this thrombus. It's this thrombus because, as I said before, you don't have any shadowing of the scar here. So the dark area doesn't go through the myocardial wall, it goes there. And this thrombus and individual orthogonal, which is something that always advocate to do. You can see that here in the orthogonal plane, very clearly this is a thrombus and it's not shadowing. And then you can see here that the white area here is actually the scar myocardium, and what comes inside is filling the peg is a thrombus. So I don't hesitate to use orthogonal use. Just the closing and the administration, get a good result. Now, patient, one of the most challenging, I have to say, with the previous ABG, we did closure back in 2009, and set the situ and has been referred for PT ablation. I know this is very difficult because you see this very big aneurysm based on the field work, based on the first septum. The apex is right, looks happy, so I don't expect anything there, but I want to know what's happening here. There's no way to tell from this image, and you cannot get away with it without contrast. So this contrast administration gives you this contour here, which one can say that the LV wall could be a thrombus. Definitely it's not shadowing because, as I said before, it's not going through the myocardial wall. So this is a scar, the bright area. And here it can be either the wall or the thrombus, but I think it's a thrombus because if you follow the contour here, it's more likely to go around that way rather than going over there. So that may appreciate it was a thrombus. Here you can see the shading from the scar here that goes outside of the myocardium here, but I think that this thrombus. Trying to view this values from different angles was not particularly helpful. Change the settings, went to lower my setting with index 0.18. The focus probably could have been a bit lower here, but again, you see the scar in the intercepting with a lot of shadowing, and again, it's not particularly helpful. Yeah, again, a lot of shadowing from the scar. You see how the shadow goes through the myocardial wall. And I had a feeling that this is an electron. So anyway, this patient had to go for an ablation. My EP colleagues had to take them on board. So we got a patient on the table for a ablation. And at that time, I had the opportunity to QA. Here you will look at things outside that for those who are familiar with QA. It's a peasant field. There's something there. I'm not like very happy that this is the war. I think it's a plot there. And he's explain again how the impression of something there. In any event, it's not crystal clear. And in that case, by advancing the probe to get over the stomach, you can see the short axis view basal and clear wall, and that's what you see. Without a doubt, this is thrombus. With an orthogonal view, that's the basal clear wall with a large thrombus. It must fill the aneurysm. In any event, my colleagues thought it would be safe to carry the big ablation, which was in this area, the scar area, and we didn't touch thrombus, and you can also use a 3D enhanced image to appreciate the thrombus there. And this is the corresponding image from the MRI. This is pretty much what transgression in the QA with the thrombus there, the Alexandros, and this is the two-chamber view, which if you go back to the echo view, I think they're quite similar. So what we're seeing here actually is a thrombus, and is this filling defect here. So the wall is going this way around as we thought, and this filling defect is the floor. And it is very difficult case because for many of three reasons. Number one is it's not at the edge of say, it's in the parting. So the parting have attenuation, you don't have very clear images. Number two, you have attenuation shading from the contrast itself. And number three, as shown, you have acoustic shading from the scar, which extends up to this area, and you cannot tell whether it's, or you cannot tell easily if it's a filling defect or just acoustic shading from the scar or the metal. And there's another patient presented with glaucoma strokes. A very different story here. And when I saw these images, I was not entirely sure whether some almost abnormality had the apex with the apex of aneurysmal here, I couldn't see the cutting. And I wouldn't commit to a diagnosis. I was thinking of apical motion abnormality or apical aneurysm or apical hypertrophy, and it was only the contrast enhanced that was an answer. So we started to that everybody recognizes this hypertrophy. There's a cleft here and a massive cleft right at the apex, and very good perfusion, which you can see also in the low MI settings. And again, you can appreciate the contrast going all the way around this muscle, and the apex is very thin. So keep that image in mind. By looking at aneurysmal area here, and by using lower maiden with IDO, you can see the contrast filling the massive here. So this perfusion, it is perfused, it's not thrombus from the slide. And again, you can see the perfusion very nicely here, the microbounce going into the heart muscle. And again, with lower MI, you can appreciate the hypertrophy, and the MRI image is identical with this thinning at the apex, more aneurysm, and the diagnosis of the coronary is confirmed. It's another interesting case, a lady who presented with anterolateral atrial elevation and troponin rise after root operation in the intensive care unit. So went to an echo and see what's happening to the heart because she was stable by iron support. And here you can see something at the apex. I think it was just a mechanical one, but I'm not entirely sure. And I will come myself. So I thought it would be a good idea to put this here. And using the APO to start with, like a freshman marker, just there's no thrombus there. But what is interesting, there's some perfusion there. So it does not look like an impact near part. It's not like a dark area, non perfused. And even when we switch to the low MI, with using the kind of 0.8, of course, this high gain here, the near field, but definitely there's perfusion here. With the Warsaw multis. So I really think maybe it's not an IFA, but just Warsaw multi apical segments with normal myocardial perfusion. And this could be like a type of tubal stored here. And we just went out in the ICU now record. 2 days later, we saw normalization of this. And so it was actually a type of tubal cardiomyopathy with Warsaw multis, but no perfusion defect of the LBA and mid segments. Another interesting case, we actually played class for Seco. Previously, G, is a smoker from China, and here just give you cases about just the setting of Seco, the Seco. Some people maybe had gone with hard contrast here. It's a 14 view, the 2 chamber top right. I'm not happy with the anterior wall, and I'm not happy with the segment here but also the anterior wall in the short actually is not great, as related with contrast. Here you can see now the X is perfectly seen in our views, and also the anterior wall. Even here, you see a very different image on the short axis. You can appreciate the anterior wall. It's also different with contrast, but it's a very good image. And again, do not hesitate to go to the low MI setting, drop the mechanical index, and it's going to be even better appreciation of the levels for you all. use looks very nicely. Figure you see pretty much all the same segments. So not hasty to use very minor products of DSC. Again, another patient who has no corneal disease was enrolled in research studies. I came for stressectomy with ischemia. This is a big path that you see. When you stress to rest, you have some swelling, especially the apex. And in that case, I believe pretty much vast majority of the audience know that you need to increase the infusion rate at the baseline. So we achieve better classification of the apex. You don't need to do that. You can reduce the infusion rate and set a contrast when you're stressed because you have high state. But you can see the difference between the rest and the peak stress. Generally, you have a lot of swelling here. In that case, you need to increase the infusion rate. And also, don't hesitate, as I said before, to use a mechanical index. It's going to reduce the distraction with better identification. Another use of contrast is to look at communication between cavities, and I'll go through some cases with you. This a lady had inherited root and scenic replacement some years ago for severe AR and the late order. She had good recovery, but she was left with an aortic crash and scenic aneurysm, which was not amenable to endovascular stenting. And then she was made stereostomy with a frozen elephant track to replace the aortic arch. The surgery was uncomplicated. Came back after the discharge for follow-up echo. And what we saw was this funny structure around the every wall, which didn't make any sense because the surgery didn't touch any of the part, didn't touch the left ventricle, didn't touch any of the coronaries. It just repaired the aortic arch. And we couldn't explain why we could see that. And my colleague also tried to use some color doppler. Yeah, see maybe a bit of color going through with the scale dropped to 38 centimeters per second. And it was, of course, a bit that showed actually this cavity. Which I had to admit I was not actually what is I couldn't explain why there's this cavity there. So using contrast, the aerial crystal was perfect. The mechanical image 0.3 was right, and you had to reduce it. The focus at the apex actually where the actually study, and that showed there was communication between the cavity and this cavity around the heart, which was left ventricular aneurysm. Very unexpected finding, and it was like a surgery. It was caused by the left ventricle. So it was a catheter in the left and was a pumping heart operation. So the catheter was touching the elbow wall, which was constantly pumping towards the tip of the catheter. It's not very hard and soft, but because the continuous press code is a thing of the wall, the advantage you can see here, the CT scan and the MRI scan top right, and here with contrast one facing part of my colleagues here. Another interesting case of a lady who was found unresponsive with aphasia and hypertension. She was from the right stroke. She came for an echo. That's what we saw. And pretty much that everybody is familiar with this entity, which is what we call the microplanetary classification. As three typical features on echo, we have this right, we have the core, which is dark, and usually don't have acoustic shading. That's why you can see actually the capsule even at the side of the left head. There's not much shading from patient there. So it was not clear why this patient had a stroke and with just atrial fibrillation. But some patients with this shading have some thrombi sitting on the patient's classification, which may challenge the circulation for the stroke, or even calcific debris from the calcium can go into the brain for the stroke. But they have also been cases which describe a rupture of the capsule, and the lipid core actually is related to circulation, can cause embolic events. So we thought it would be a good idea to do some contrast and see if there's any communication between the core of the calcification and the cavity. Here we excluded any communication. You can see very nicely here the case classification, and the inside the core is dark. There is no contrast graining there. We used our orthogonal views and also the Lerner setting with their limits at 0.18. Again, you can appreciate even in the past analysis that there is no contrast graining into the core of this case classification. Again, orthogonal view, the short very Nice to see that this is dark and dark. There's no microbubbles going into the hole. Another interesting case, patient presented with cardiac arrest. And in the contrast, we saw this thing here. Sorry, I don't have any scene images for this one, just the start pictures was the early years. We published that with my colleague at the hospital. And seeing that looks like a cleft, so we decided to do a contrast echo. And actually, there are two clefts. And there was very good correlation with the LV gram and the MRI as well. So this is two left ventricular clefts, which has some clinical significance, some phenotypes being related to habit of cardiomyopathy. It's another interesting case presented with STEMI late presentation stable. And looking at the enhanced images here, I have a significant volume of mass here. A big gap here. In the curve, you see that's at least the with flow from the left to the right side, as expected. And using contrast here, you can see the gap. Actually, you can measure the gaps. There you can see a bit of scarring here. That's a bright area here. And by looking at different views, you can appreciate the size of the USB and different manner. You look at the video on the other dimension. But that's not only that. By reducing the mechanical index of longitudinal we could appreciate here the effect which actually almost the kinetic area. So altogether, yes, the kinetic area and its numbers. Now that's how do with the microbubbles and the contrast. But I'll talk to you very briefly about the nonlinear imaging outside microbubbles and contrast. Because the nonlinear ultrasound imaging as at the beginning has been developed in the context of interventional agents. But doing some research with my colleagues here at King's College Hospital, we found that actually the nonlinear imaging can be also used in different settings. And as we discussed at the beginning, using this path cancellation techniques or multipath techniques, high modulation plus inversion, you can enhance a nonlinear sequence of a linear signal. And it's not only microbubbles which have nonlinear signal, nonlinear response. And find by looking at an experimental in vitro scar, using power modulation can enhance significantly the signal in the scar, and we suppress the surrounding signal from muscle. So when you use a steady path sequence, you can still see the scar, but it's not clearly delineated, as opposed to use power modulation as a nonlinear imaging modality. And applying that to humans, you can see this is a two-chamber view which completely ignores the myocardium using power modulation and cardiography. That's a path cancellation technique. And you can see the inferior wall scar, which correlates perfectly to the MRI here. And of course, this is something you can use with contrast. So using the contrast settings without the microbubbles, there is some usefulness there to enhance any non-linear signal in the heart. And as I will show you in the following cases, it's not only the microbubbles which have non-linear response. So we demonstrate that using power modulation echocardiography, we can detect and quantify myocardial scar only because we can bring up the scar and make it brighter and easier for us to read and evaluate. And we can also quantify the myocardial scar using MRI as reference, leg value enhancement. We see that the two modalities are high good in terms of scar volume quantification, but also good correlation of one to another. And this is one case that this is a patient with inferior infection. You can see a bit of increasing signal intensity and the field work. But when you use the contrast, when you switch to the power modulation part sequence, you can see that the myocardium is considerably brighter compared to the rest of the myocardium. This is the scar, so you can enhance actually the scar by switching to a nonlinear imaging part sequence. And you can usually reduce bubbles here. And it's not only the myocardial scar, but it's also other calcified structures in the heart. For example, this is a calcified mitral valve. And in this standard path sequence, you can see the fracture here, the operational activity. You can appreciate actually what's happening to this calcification, but you can also see the extent of calcification. By using the path cancellation technique, power modulation, nonlinear imaging, you can see here how the calcification extends into the myocardium. And you can see actually the tips of the lipids are calcified. And actually, this is just a vibration up, but it's not how the pump looks like normally. And in a different patient, you can see classification here on the proximal parameters. And here you can see how it extends in the myocardial wall. Of course, this is the overestimation of the calcium. It's not so calcified about. This is the true classification of the valve. And also the anterior leaflet is not calcified at all. There's no calcium here. But on another occasion, that you can see that there's classification also of the anterior leaflet, also the posterior leaflet and posterior annulus. You see how it extends into the myocardium. So this is the impact of cardiac modulation and cardiography. This is a nonlinear imaging modality used for contrast echocardiograms. And if you go back to this patient with the case classification, you can see here how the case classification is enhanced, but not only that, also the pericardium, which has no linear response, is extremely bright. Here compared to the myocardium, which is completely not, has been discovered in with cardiac modulation echocardiography. And if we go back to this patient we discussed before, here we have late enhancement, as you can see, and this word here is scarred, or this is the scar. You can see here in the myocardium, which is very much enhanced using this contrast modality. So you don't only see the LV cavity, but you can see the wall. You can see how the myocardium, the scarred myocardium is enhanced. And I find this application very interesting. So some researchers which set up the potential value of myocardial contrast echocardiography for detection of myocardial fibrosis hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And what they did, they gave contrast to a patient with HCM. And what they say here that myocardial contrast echo shows unusual capture of contrast in the anteroseptal wall of the left ventricle 5 minutes after injection. So they try to mimic the leg rhythm enhancement. And this is the LG image, and you can see the LG exactly the same spot right here. So my objection here is that I think the research here has been misled. And it's not microbubbles that have been captured here, because this is leg rhythm enhancement, and leg rhythm enhancement is the extracellular matrix. So this is a vascularized. So I think what the researchers did here, they managed to enhance the nonlinear signal from the fibrotic myocardium, and at the same time they suppress the linear signal from the normal myocardium, and that's why that looks so bright. There's not microbubbles in here. I wouldn't expect microbubbles in an area with late gut because there's no vasculature here, just the extracellular matrix. But I believe they managed to use the nonlinear response of fibrotic myocardium to demonstrate it better with contrast settings with biomodulation echo, as opposed to accumulation of microbubbles here, because it makes no sense for bubbles to accumulate here where the late gut is. There's no vasculature here. And I will close with the by-effects of contrast echo. It has been studied in the past, it's been demonstrated that in animal and human studies that arrhythmias may be induced by transthoracic low frequency ultrasound during intervention of contrast microbubbles. This something we have to keep in mind. And here you see as we increase the infusion rate of microbubbles, the frequency of PVCs, premature ventricular complexes is increasing. And we see that high mechanical indices with non-imaging continuous waves, WPW, can be used to for thrombolysis or target drug delivery. And it's quite interesting because back in 1998, this research described that microbubbles can be destroyed by ultrasound, as we know, thus produce some energy. This by effect can be used for local drug delivery, angiogenesis, vascular remodeling, or tumor destruction. And some other researchers report methods for using atrial ventricular arrhythmias using ultrasound microbubbles. This is something you need to be aware of when you use ultrasound contrast, especially when you use a flash. Until you notice all the ventures have some limit in terms of the mechanical index you can use for flash imaging. It's not to the maximum mechanical index that the machine can provide, but it's lower than that because of the by-effects can induce arrhythmias. And I will close with this case. This is a 77-year-old gentleman with all large LED infarct with ejection fraction inverse you see. As a CRTB in situ with recurrent ventricular tachycardias and managed with amyodon because the VT ablation is considered very high risk. He presented with incessant and refractory VT over 10 days. It was impossible to terminate it even with anti-catheter pacing. And it was brought to us for VT ablation. And as part of the workup, we did contrast echo for LV thrombus and to clear up the patient for the ablation. We did a flash and replenishment, and you can see after the flash, the motion of the heart is changing. So you see how the heart is moving here and becomes more synchronous. after the flash. And if you look at the ECG here at the bottom, you see that after the flash, we managed to induce two couples of ventricular ectopics, and then sinus rhythm has been restored. So by delivering the energy of the flash into the myocardium, we managed to break the reentry circuit, which was essential for 10 days. And just by using flash, constant cardiology, we terminated incessant and refractory ventricular tachycardia. It's not something that I advocate, but it's just to demonstrate the by-effects of contrast imaging. And that's all from my end. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be open to questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Alexandros, for sharing this impressive collection of cases. I think you showed very nicely how useful contrast can be in solving inconclusive examination, and you insisted also on the importance of physics and the importance of settings, of equipment settings.